the question there ultimately is does Christianity remain the same if it takes on the cultural trappings or thinking there in a way of another world?
Martin Scorsese just lost someone who meant everything to him. For nearly 40 years, they shared secrets that changed cinema forever. But on January 15, 2025, tragedy struck. The phone call that shattered Scorsese came at 3 a.m. Within hours, he was posting tributes that broke the hearts of millions. But this loss revealed something even more painful. A hidden project they worked on together. A final conversation that haunts him. And a promise Scorsese can never keep. Today, we're uncovering the heartbreaking truth about what really happened. Martin Charles Scorsese was born on November 17, 1942, in the Flushing neighborhood of Queens, New York City, though he spent most of his childhood in Manhattan's Little Italy. His early years were shaped by chronic asthma, a condition so severe that it kept him from joining the other children in sports or outdoor games. Stuck inside, he turned to movies. His parents and older brother often took him to theaters, and he developed an early obsession with films, especially Powell and Pressburger's The Tales of Hoffman from 1951. He rented that movie over and over from a local shop. Both of his parents, Catherine Kappa and Charles Scorsese, worked in New York's garment district. Charles was a clothes presser, while Catherine worked as a seamstress. But what made them stand out was how they later appeared in their son's films. At first, they were ordinary working-class immigrants, but they became memorable faces on screen. During the premiere of Mean Streets at the New York Film Festival in 1973, Catherine caused a stir when she told people in the lobby, "I just want you to know, we never use that word in the house. I don't know where he got it from." She was referring to the film's heavy use of profanity, which she rejected as a devout Catholic, even though it was key to the film's realism. Both she and her husband would go on to appear in Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, and the family documentary Italian American, leaving their own small mark on cinema. Scorsese's first serious steps toward filmmaking came during his time at New York University, not when he was a child. In 1963, he directed What's a Nice Girl Like You Doing in a Place Like This?, followed in 1964 by It's Not You, Murray. These shorts showed his early talent for handheld camera work and quick, dynamic storytelling. He had been deeply inspired by his film history professor, whose passion for cinema convinced him that filmmaking was more than a dream. With just 16mm film and limited resources, he created stories that hinted at the mastery he would later bring to classics like Taxi Driver and Goodfellas. In 1967, he made The Big Shave, a 6-minute short that shocked audiences. The film showed a man calmly shaving in a spotless white bathroom until he cut into his own skin, continuing until the scene was filled with blood. It was a disturbing but powerful metaphor for America's involvement in the Vietnam War. The soundtrack was Bunny Berrigan's I Can't Get Started, and it was filmed on donated Agfa color film at NYU. Though only 6 minutes long, it used music, violence, and montage to leave a lasting impact and revealed Scorsese's willingness to use bold imagery to deliver a message. By 1969, at the age of 27, he was working as one of 7 editors on Michael Wadley's Woodstock documentary. The project involved 120 hours of raw concert footage from more than a dozen cameras. Despite the modest pay, the experience was invaluable. He was remembered for his intensity, even once panicking when trapped under a collapsed pup tent backstage because of his claustrophobia. The challenge of condensing the enormous footage into a story taught him techniques he would later use in Goodfellas, especially the rapid montage style that became one of his trademarks. Not long after, he met producer Roger Corman, who offered him his first studio film. Corman gave him $600,000 and only 24 days to shoot Boxcar Bertha in Arkansas. The deal came with demands. The film had to include nudity, violence, explosions, and car chases. Scorsese had to cut corners, abandoning plans to shoot in Baton Rouge and Texarkana, and instead relying on Arkansas locations, including the Reeder Railroad, for train scenes. The experience taught him how to keep his vision alive even when working under strict financial and creative limits, a lesson that would prove essential later in his career. Around this time, director Brian De Palma introduced him to Robert De Niro at a Christmas dinner. De Palma had already seen De Niro's talent and believed he was perfect for Scorsese's style of storytelling. The two quickly bonded, realizing they had mutual friends from New York. That meeting led to De Niro's role in Mean Streets in 1973. It was the beginning of one of the most celebrated partnerships in film history, with the two working together on 9 films including Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, and The Irishman. In 1973, while struggling financially, Scorsese discovered the Rolling Stones. He became obsessed with their raw energy, feeling it captured the spirit of the world he was living in. He began using their music in his films, starting with Jumping Jack Flash, to introduce Robert De Niro's character, Johnny Boy, in Mean Streets. The Stones' music became a hallmark of his films, adding intensity and authenticity. Decades later, his obsession came full circle when he directed Shine a Light in 2008, a concert documentary filmed with 18 cameras and multiple Oscar-winning cinematographers. But fame and success came at a cost. By 1978, his cocaine use had spiraled into a dangerous addiction. At the Cannes Film Festival, he shocked interviewers when he suddenly declared, "No more coke, no more interviews," and arranged for a private plane to bring him more drugs from Paris. The addiction, which had started as a way to cope with self-doubt, turned him into someone angry and difficult, often throwing glasses and picking fights. The crisis peaked when he collapsed in New York after taking cocaine that dangerously mixed with his asthma medication and other prescriptions. He suffered internal bleeding and came close to a brain hemorrhage. Robert De Niro visited him in the hospital, standing by him like a brother. Taxi Driver almost never made it to theaters the way Martin Scorsese wanted. The MPAA first gave the movie an X rating because of its bloody final shootout. That would have killed its box office chances. Executives at Columbia Pictures were terrified and ordered Scorsese to tone it down. For a while, the director was so consumed with anger and cocaine that he sat through the night with a gun in his hands, thinking about killing the studio executive who pushed for the cuts. In the end, he found another way. He kept all the violence, but made the blood look less bright by adding red and brown filters. This trick satisfied the censors, and every frame stayed in the film. The budget was $1.9 million, not $1.3 million, as many reports once claimed. And this solution kept the movie intact. To capture the decaying streets of New York, Scorsese and his cinematographer Michael Ballhaus went into the seediest corners of Times Square. They filmed among grindhouse theaters, drug dealers, and prostitutes, the same world that shaped Travis Bickle's mind. Crime in the area had tripled between 1960 and 1980. Vietnam veterans and lonely drifters haunted these streets, giving De Niro's character a frightening sense of authenticity. They even shot in the sleazy arcade where Travis meets the child prostitute Iris, making the movie feel like a dark documentary about the city itself. When Taxi Driver premiered at the 1976 Cannes Film Festival, it won the Palme d'Or, but the win came with chaos. The movie's disturbing violence divided critics, and the arguments only grew after John Hinckley Jr. tried to assassinate President Ronald Reagan in 1981. He admitted the film inspired him. The story itself had echoes of Arthur Bremer's diary. Bremer had shot George Wallace in 1972 and admitted he only wanted to kill someone famous, not for politics. The similarities between his diary and Travis Bickle's story made the controversy impossible to ignore. The casting of 12-year-old Jodie Foster as Iris brought even more problems. She had to go through psychiatric tests before filming. A social worker stayed on set every day. Her older sister Connie, who was 20, stood in for her body double in the most sensitive scenes. Foster was already more experienced than both Scorsese and De Niro, having acted since she was 3. She was paid $35,000, the same amount as De Niro, while Scorsese earned $65,000. The experience was difficult, with Scorsese and De Niro admitting they were nervous about directing her in such dark scenes. Still, her performance earned an Oscar nomination and stunned critics. Right after the success of Taxi Driver, Scorsese stumbled badly. His next movie, New York, New York, released in 1977, cost $14 million and only made $16.4 million. The sets were huge and expensive, including the Neon Club built with red lights and flashing tunnels. The film was originally 163 minutes, but was cut to 136 by the studio, and it flopped. MGM canceled his 3-picture deal, and Scorsese was suddenly considered unbankable in Hollywood. By 1978, his personal life collapsed. Addicted to cocaine, he nearly died from internal bleeding. Robert De Niro found him in the hospital, convinced his career was over. De Niro gave him a choice. Do you want to live or die? If you want to live, let's make this picture. That picture was Raging Bull. Scorsese admitted later that without De Niro's push, he might not have survived. Preparing for Raging Bull, Scorsese trained with Jake LaMotta himself for 6 weeks. Even though he had suffered from asthma all his life and never liked sports, LaMotta claimed he boxed over 1,000 rounds with De Niro during training, and Scorsese often joined in. At real boxing matches, Scorsese studied the details: the blood-soaked sponges, the ropes dripping with red, that shaped the film's raw style. To make the fights different from other boxing films of the time like Rocky and The Main Event, he shot Raging Bull in black and white. The slow-motion, tracking shots, and shifting ring sizes made the viewer feel disoriented, as if they were inside the ring. These choices later changed the way fight scenes were filmed in Hollywood. Despite its acclaim, Raging Bull lost the Best Director Oscar in 1981 to Robert Redford for Ordinary People. Scorsese had 8 nominations, but only 2 wins for the film, with De Niro taking Best Actor and Thelma Schoonmaker winning for editing. Many thought he had been robbed. It began a long Oscar drought that lasted until 2007, when he finally won for The Departed. Still, from that moment on, every film carried the words, "A Martin Scorsese picture," a sign of his growing reputation as a master. Scorsese's troubles weren't over. In 1983, just as Paramount was ready to start filming The Last Temptation of Christ, Christian groups bombarded the studio with more than 500 protest letters a day. On Thanksgiving, the project was canceled. Scorsese called movies and religion his whole life, and the loss crushed him. 3 years later, Universal picked it up, but only if he agreed to make a commercial hit afterward, which became Cape Fear. With the budget cut in half, he shot the film in 58 days. When The Last Temptation of Christ came out in 1988, violence erupted. In Paris, a Catholic group set off a bomb during a screening, injuring 13 people and burning 4 severely. The theater closed for 3 years. Other cinemas were hit with tear gas and stink bombs. In Strasbourg, screenings stopped when the Pope visited. Scorsese faced death threats and needed bodyguards. Evangelist Bill Bright even offered to buy the film just to destroy it. major theater chains refused to show it. Filming had already taken a toll. In the Moroccan desert, Scorsese fasted while directing, trying to match Jesus' 40-day trial. Under the heat and stress, he collapsed on set. Willem Dafoe, playing Jesus, could only stay on the cross for a few minutes at a time, needing 60 setups over 3 days. Scorsese used natural light and simple locations, ordering extras to roll in dirt for realism. The stripped-down style matched the raw spirit of the story. Years later, with Kundun, he faced even more backlash. The 14th Dalai Lama gave Scorsese a personal blessing letter, but the Chinese government immediately condemned the project. They warned Disney, which was producing the film, to stop. Beijing declared the movie an attack on China's affairs. Scorsese filmed in Morocco with non-professional actors, including a relative of the Dalai Lama. When Disney refused to back down, China banned Scorsese permanently. By 1998, Disney CEO Michael Eisner traveled to China and personally apologized, calling the film a stupid mistake and saying, "The bad news is that the film was made. The good news is that nobody watched it." The apology allowed Disney to release Mulan in China and move forward with Shanghai Disneyland, but it buried Kundun. The movie is still unavailable on Disney Plus and hard to find anywhere online. After the success of Titanic, Leonardo DiCaprio was eager to prove he was more than just a young heartthrob. He wanted to work with Martin Scorsese, and he didn't wait for the opportunity to come to him. Robert De Niro, who had acted with DiCaprio in This Boy's Life, personally told Scorsese, "He's very good. You gotta do work with him someday." De Niro rarely gave recommendations like that, which made the comment stand out. DiCaprio then tracked down the script for Gangs of New York and begged Scorsese to let him take part. The film, released in 2002, was the result of more than 10 years of development. For DiCaprio, it wasn't just about landing a role. He wanted to learn from Scorsese, a director whose work he deeply admired. This film marked the beginning of a partnership that would define much of his career. Just 2 years later, DiCaprio starred in The Aviator. This movie cost $110 million to make, which was even more than Gangs of New York. At first, Scorsese admitted he didn't enjoy flying. "I'm fascinated by it, but I just don't like it." Yet he still took on the project. To recreate Howard Hughes's world, the production used large-scale models instead of relying heavily on computer graphics. The models were expensive and detailed, with the Spruce Goose weighing 375 pounds and stretching 20 feet across, while the XF-11 weighed 750 pounds with a wingspan of 25 feet. Built by Aerotelemetry, these models took months to complete and were chosen because audiences had reacted poorly to the CGI planes in Pearl Harbor. The gamble paid off. The Aviator made $214 million worldwide. While not a massive box office hit compared to its budget, it was still a success. In 2006, Scorsese directed The Departed, which finally earned him his first Oscar for Best Director after losing 5 times before. The movie starred DiCaprio alongside Matt Damon and Jack Nicholson and told the story of an undercover cop and a mole in the Boston Irish mob. It was adapted from the Hong Kong film Infernal Affairs and ran for 2 hours and 31 minutes. Nicholson's role as Frank Costello was based on real crime boss Whitey Bulger, which added another layer of realism. The film won 4 Oscars in total, including Best Picture. It earned $132.4 million in the United States and $291.5 million worldwide, with a budget of $90 million. Many felt Scorsese should have been recognized much earlier for films like Raging Bull, Goodfellas, and Gangs of New York. But The Departed finally gave him the award he deserved. Years later, Scorsese pushed boundaries again with The Wolf of Wall Street. Released in 2013, the film set a record for profanity, using the F-word 506 times. That worked out to 2.81 times per minute across its 2 hours and 59 minutes. It even beat Scorsese's own Casino, which had 422 uses at 2.4 times per minute. Other contenders like Gary Oldman's Kneel by Mouth used 428, but Wolf of Wall Street went further. Jordan Belfort's memoir, on which the film was based, actually contained more than 700 F-words over 500 pages. The language, along with scenes of drugs and sex, caused major issues in the Middle East. In the UAE, the cut version was 45 minutes shorter, and viewers complained that so many words were muted, it was hard to follow conversations. Scorsese defended the choice, saying it reflected the culture of greed and corruption the movie was portraying. While making these films, Scorsese also devoted himself to saving cinema history. In 1990, he founded the Film Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to preserving films. By 2025, the foundation had saved over 925 features from nitrate decay and restored more than 1,000 films with the help of archives and studios. Its board includes some of the greatest directors of all time, like Woody Allen, Francis Ford Coppola, Clint Eastwood, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and Christopher Nolan. Scorsese had been inspired years earlier when he realized color film was fading too quickly, which is why he shot Raging Bull in black and white. Through the foundation, these restored films are now shown at festivals, museums, and schools, ensuring that future generations can experience them. Scorsese's love for authenticity also shaped The Aviator in other ways. To recreate the look of cinema in the 1920s and 1930s, he convinced Technicolor to bring back the old 2-strip and 3-strip dye processes. Working with cinematographer Robert Richardson, he spent 2 months in pre-production testing how the colors would appear. Production designer Dante Ferretti even had to adjust his sets and palettes so they would look right when enhanced by the Technicolor effect. This was Scorsese's first time working with digital color processing, showing how he was willing to use modern tools to bring the past alive. Scorsese's passion for world cinema led him to create the World Cinema Project in 2007, extending his foundation's mission to countries with few preservation resources. By 2025, the project had restored 51 films from 29 nations. One of the most remarkable was Tuki Buki, a 1973 Senegalese film that almost vanished after its only surviving print was badly damaged by termites. With support from luxury brands like Armani, Cartier, Qatar Airways, and the Qatar Museum Authority, the film was digitally repaired and released. Scorsese personally introduced the Criterion version in 2013, praising its daring style and importance in African storytelling. Martin Scorsese has been married 5 times, and today he shares his life with Helen Morris, whom he married on July 22, 1999. They first met in 1995 when Morris was working as a book editor at Random House, helping with filmmaker Michael Powell's memoir. Before their romance began, she even worked on a project close to Scorsese's heart, his mother's cookbook titled Italian American, the Scorsese Family Cookbook, published in 1996. Their relationship grew quickly that same year when Morris visited him in Morocco during the filming of Kundun, his movie about the Dalai Lama. What was meant to be a short trip of just 1 week stretched until Thanksgiving. Morris later explained why it worked so well, saying they simply got along and never fought. She described herself as calm, while Scorsese was not. Helen Morris was born in 1947 into a well-connected New York family with a literary background, descended from the famous novelist Edith Wharton. She had been married before and had not planned to remarry until she met Scorsese. Her life took a difficult turn when she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 1990. Scorsese has often spoken about her resilience, saying he had never seen such strength and positivity in the face of such a hard illness. Together, they had a daughter, Francesca, who has become something of a star on TikTok. She started creating short videos with her famous father, convincing him to join her even though he knew nothing about the platform at first. Scorsese admitted he was reluctant, but she asked him to try it for just a minute, and before long, their videos spread around the world. Many of them show Francesca teaching her father Gen Z slang or doing makeup tutorials while he reacts in his own way. Scorsese has even joined in on the fun by saying phrases like, "That slaps," and "I'm so woke," which Francesca finds hilarious and sweet. Although he sometimes turns down her ideas when they feel like they're going too far, their father-daughter chemistry has made them very popular. In early 2024, they even appeared together in a Squarespace commercial during the Super Bowl, where Francesca guided him through making a website. The pair has become beloved online, showing how different generations can connect in funny and heartwarming ways. Away from the spotlight of TikTok, Scorsese has always had a deep passion for music. While stories about him owning 35,000 vinyl records and upsetting his neighbors aren't verified, what is true is that music has been at the core of his creative process. He spends countless hours in editing rooms, making sure every song fits perfectly with the mood of a scene. For Scorsese, music is not just background noise, it guides the rhythm of his films and helps shape the emotions of his stories. Many in Hollywood consider his ability to marry sound and visuals one of his greatest gifts. Scorsese's career has also been marked by fascinating friendships. He first met David Lynch in 1986 at the Telluride Film Festival, where Lynch's Blue Velvet premiered. The setting was intimate, high in the Colorado mountains, and it gave them a chance to discover the similarities in their backgrounds. Both grew up haunted by strict religious upbringings, Scorsese in Little Italy with Catholic guilt, Lynch in the Midwest, before finding peace through transcendental meditation. That meeting was the start of a bond between two filmmakers who both understood how to put nightmares on screen. 4 years later, while working on Goodfellas, Scorsese asked Lynch for creative input on the film's hallucinatory scenes. Lynch suggested a slow-motion dolly shot that would feel like the camera itself was dreaming. That advice helped shape some of the film's most unforgettable sequences, including the paranoid helicopter chase and the intense restaurant scene. Their conversations about dreams and altered states stayed with Scorsese, influencing later films such as Shutter Island, where critics noticed Lynch's stylistic fingerprints. Their partnership continued into 2015 when the two co-curated an exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Titled Surreal Soundscapes, Cinema and the Unconscious Mind, it ran from September 12 to December 6th and featured 47 films. Lynch focused on sound design, while Scorsese highlighted the role of popular music in creating dreamlike moods. Their joint talk on October 15th attracted more than 800 attendees and later reached 2.3 million viewers online, one of the museum's most watched presentations. The two spent 6 months selecting films and debated over including works like Buñuel's Un Chien Andalou and Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast. It was a showcase of how both men saw cinema as a way of exploring the subconscious. There were even plans for Scorsese to appear in one of Lynch's long-dreamed projects, Ronnie Rocket. Lynch wanted him to play a mysterious character called the Man with Film Strip Eyes, a projectionist whose blinking revealed strips of 35mm film. Though the project never secured funding, Lynch later said it was the one element he refused to compromise on, a sign of how much he valued Scorsese's presence in the film. When David Lynch died on January 15, 2025, At the age of 78, Scorsese was one of the first to pay tribute. Lynch passed away from cardiac arrest caused by chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, a condition worsened by decades of smoking that he had started as a child. He died at his daughter's home after being forced to evacuate during the Los Angeles wildfires known as the Sunset Fire. Just hours later, Scorsese shared an emotional statement that began, "We were lucky to have had David Lynch." Within 24 hours, his words had been viewed more than 12 million times online. He praised Lynch for creating images unlike anything he or anyone else had ever seen. Lynch was cremated and laid to rest on January 22nd at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where many cinema legends are buried. Even as he grieved for his friend, Scorsese showed no signs of slowing down. In late 2021, Apple Studios announced that he would direct a biopic about the Grateful Dead, starring Jonah Hill as Jerry Garcia. It would mark their first time working together again since The Wolf of Wall Street in 2013. The film plans to trace the band's rise from San Francisco in the 1960s to worldwide fame, revisiting Scorsese's earlier connection to the band when he produced the 2017 documentary Long Strange Trip. Though delays have come from Hill's personal controversies and Scorsese's busy schedule, the project remains a priority. Now nearly 82 years old, Scorsese has made it clear he has no plans to retire. At a press conference in October 2024 at Turin's Museum of Cinema, he dismissed rumors that his upcoming films had been postponed because he was stepping away. He explained that he still had stories to tell and hoped God would give him the strength to make them. Among his upcoming projects is The Life of Jesus, based on the novel by Shusaku Endo, which he intends to set in modern New York. Expected to run about 80 minutes, it may become one of his shortest films. He is also working on a Frank Sinatra biopic, though its future depends on approval from the singer's estate. In addition, he is producing a documentary about marine archaeology that focuses on an ancient shipwreck near Sicily.